Hotep, I'm Dr. Gloria Lattimore Peace, host and producer of OmniU Presents the H3O Art of Life show. The title of this show is Iconology, the Next Generation. I've done a series of shows called Iconology in which I have presented some of the icons of this generation. And for reasons that I will never be able to explain to myself, one of them was flying under my radar. And I realized, when I realized it, I realized that she was also the daughter of an icon. So that's why this show is called Iconology, the Next Generation, because we have to talk, first of all, about the generation that produced this icon, and in the person of her mother, Jessie Ma Houston. And I want to introduce my guest, Reverend Helen Sinclair, who we all fondly know as Queen Mother.
Shalom.
Shalom. It's so good to see you. So good
Thank
to
you.
have you as my guest. I want you to talk about your mother first, but of course I know that your journey is, in the footsteps of your mother, so I'm sure that at some point it's going to begin to be your story. So talk to me about your own mother, who was born in 1899.
Yes.
Yes.
When I first heard that, I couldn't understand it. I had to be grown before I could understand how she could be born in some other century. I kept saying, I can't believe, how can she be born in 1899 and everybody else is in 19-something? I couldn't believe that. So eventually I did find out. And I know that my mother seemed to have come from a strong background, because she used to always mention when somebody had good blood. Oh, they've got good blood. And so I found out that my grandfather was named Doc Woods, and they were out of Blackman, Louisiana. And as I looked on the map and tried to figure it out, I saw that Blackman was a very small town, but I saw other towns that I heard her speak of, Homer. And then when she was a little girl, I'm sure, they left Blackman, Louisiana. And as I was attending inner city studies, we did a lot of research, and I found out that that's one of the places where they were suing to be after slavery. And I said, now I can see my grandfather leaving there, getting out of there, because some of the people left after they were emancipated. They left and started going other places, and I could see where they went to Magnolia, Arkansas, and then in Stamps, Arkansas. And in Stamps, Arkansas, they started a whole little town. And most of the people who were there seemed to be people that they knew. So in Chicago, I knew a lot of people that were from Stamps, Arkansas. And so it took me a long time to figure that out and realize that my grandfather had a country store. And of course, Stamps is the same place where Maya Angelou was. And
I thought of her.
But my grandmother, my auntie told me, said, but our store was a lot bigger than that. It was like, had everything in it. And my daughter's been looking up some of our ancestry, and she said she realized when she looked on the census that our family really lived in a neighborhood where there were a lot of white neighbors. So I'm seeing it was, and I've been to Stamps, and I just love going there. I just, as they say, looking for my roots. I had to go to Stamps, Arkansas. And when I got there, I just had to kiss the ground. And I said, I have a grandparents who left land 5 years after slavery. They would leave land. That means I must do something with my life. And I said, now, if they hadn't done anything, I could say, oh, well, But I'm thinking, here's somebody 5 years after slavery. They helped to start the CME Church, Christian Methodist Episcopal Church. And there's a church in Stamps, Arkansas, that my grandfather started. I said, that makes me know that I must do something with my life. Then my mom, she was always a very strong person, but I understand that she had rheumatic fever when she was little, so her father opened her up this store and had her selling. So I imagine that's why when we came to Chicago, first thing she did was start a business. My mother started a business as soon as she got here. And I would wonder, how could she come here as a woman and rent an apartment or a store or something? We came here about 1927 to Chicago. We are in Chicago, aren't we? Sometimes I forget where I am. I move around so much. But she came here when I was a little bitty girl. We left Hot Springs, Arkansas. You know, my mom was in Stamps, and evidently she went to Hot Springs for those baths. This is what I'm thinking. And she met my father, and somehow or other she married him. And so that's how it came about that we were in Hot Springs, Arkansas. He had 2 sons. So one of the sons, he was accused of stealing some penny candy, because candy didn't cost very much. But anything anybody did that was black, you know, they went to prison. They put him in prison called Cummins Prison Farm. And my mother said that sometimes after that, she received a letter from the warden saying that her little son had gotten killed and they had buried him. And so since my mama was fiery anyway, this makes me know how fiery she was. She wrote a letter to them and asked them why could they bury her son without notifying her. Because she said they had a little white boy and they kept him out 10 days until they notified his parents. So they wrote her back and said, well, they had no place to embalm little black boys. I'm sure they called them something else. So that made my mother and father say, this is not the place for us. And so they came to Chicago. And that's how that started. And I was just listening the other day to Professor Jonathan Jackson, where he mentioned Will Durant Motors. And I said, oh, that strikes a bell, because I remember my father worked for Durant Motors in Chicago, and I never heard of it again. I kept thinking, I said, am I imagining this, or did my father really work for Durant? And he did. So that verified that there was a automobile place here, and I think they were partners with Chevrolet, I believe. And then it was like this young man who just died jobs, how he lost his job. And this is what Durant Motors did too. So I was satisfied. I'm learning more about my people, and the more I learn, the more I want to know. Because I think if you, it's like a tree with roots, it keep on growing, but if you don't know your history, it just doesn't work.
Right. Your mother was one of the founders of Operation Breadbasket?
She was there because they were meeting at the Chicago Theological Seminary when she first had us to drive her out there every Saturday. And so there were businessmen and ministers. And so she was one of them, and she had hooked up with Fred Walls in the Chicago Courier. So Fred Walls said, well, since you're going there all the time anyway, why don't you write? And my mother said, well, you know, I'm only a 3rd grade scholar. You want me to write a newspaper article? He said, all you do is write what you hear, and we'll put it in the paper. So she ended up having a whole page, Ma Houston's page. In fact, she wrote, and when she got the whole page, the next thing I knew, I was writing and putting things on her page, and my daughter Famita was writing. So we were all writing for the Chicago Courier.
She was marching at some point. She was older when she started. I was
she was 65 when she started. Yeah, because Reverend Jackson mentioned that. He said when we met Ma, she was already a grandmother, because most of them were young, just as 20-something years old. So for somebody out there 65 with them, it was kind of unusual. But she stuck with them, and she was that kind of person if she started working with them. Her first march, though, was really with Dick Gregory.
Okay.
Because Dick Gregory was marching around the cemetery at 67th
Cottage Grove.
Yeah. Mr. Leake told them that they wouldn't allow him to, they wouldn't let him use the facilities for an African American. So they thought that was wrong. They were right there in the neighborhood. So they started marching. My mama, of course, went and marched with them.
At 65.
Yeah. And Dick Gregory became one of her very special sons. He said, if I had to choose a mother, I'd choose you. So.
Really? Well, you know, that cemetery now has some of the most illustrious of our deceased, even the mayor, the former
when they
mayor,
got Harold Washington, that's how
Washington.
they got people to start coming. I remember that, and they said, we'll bring some of your people from Lincoln or wherever they are. But I love Lincoln Cemetery because I saw our history there. You go through that front gate and you see people that were here, Robert Cole and just everybody, you know.
Well, you know, it was immortalized by Gwendolyn Brooks when she wrote for DeWitt Williams on his way to Lincoln Cemetery. I love that poem. You know, Lincoln Cemetery does have our history, and when you, well, most, I won't say most, but a great many black people do not like to visit cemeteries, and it's always troubling to me that you can visit a black cemetery and not see much in the way of monuments, or I know that some cemeteries don't allow standing monuments in some sections of the cemetery, and they have all kinds of rules and regulations. But I also know that commemorative floral arrangements are not seen as much in our cemeteries as they are in cemeteries in other communities. You can, if you're driving up Sheridan Road and you start encountering the cemeteries, you go into Evanston, you will just, it just looks as though people go all the time. And it just seems that it would be a good idea for us to remember our ancestors and to commemorate them at every opportunity, because they still live within us.
Right.
And Jessie Ma Houston is living within you now. She's done a lot of work with respect to incarcerated people. And how did she become involved in that, and to what extent? Well,
really thinking about her stepson going to prison was one thing that maybe a lot of people had not had that experience. So when she we had a health kitchen at our house, which people might not know, but she was the one that had the health kitchen, and then Dr. Fulton and Dick Gregory all were into that kind of health food.
Really?
So we had it right
too?
there, right where I live now, 41st Street.
All right.
Businessmen would make appointments and say, you have to meet me at Ma Houston's health restaurant. And she had, she would have, if you came in there and you were fat and your wife was thin, she would say, I can work with both of you. I can make her gain and make you lose. And so she'd serve you like that, you know, like, and every day it would be a different juice, you know, tomato juice this morning, grapefruit juice the next. It was all different. And she was just, and I said all of my children were jumping out of bed. Like people say, the children don't get up. I said, mine did. Because my mother fed them the kind of food that make you wake up and get up. So it was beautiful. She was the first person in the world I ever saw eating yogurt.
Really?
Oh yes, I'd never heard of yogurt before in my life. It was something they were saying came from over in some other country, and she got into that yogurt and vegetables and juicers. Oh, she juiced everything, carrots and everything.
Which explains why you are enjoying
I think so.
such good health, such vitality.
Right.
So did she visit as a chaplain in the prisons?
My mom started going to Cook County Jail because one of the young men who was boarding with her, that she was trying to put some weight on, for some reason, I think they had set some traps to kind of catch people doing things. So in the building where he lived, over on Lake Park, there was a lot of mailboxes, and so they had a letter up on the mailbox, and he saw it, and I don't know, for some reason he thought it had some money in it. Somebody was sending somebody something, so he took it and he opened it. And I think that they already was waiting for somebody to do that. And they arrested him, and when my mother heard he was in jail, she just couldn't understand that, and so she had to go see him. And at that time, we were both members of St. Paul Christian Methodist Episcopal Church at 4644 South Dearborn.
That was the church that housed the Howelton Day School.
Yes.
Yes.
I remember that. Yeah, a long time ago. Whew. So she went to see him, and when she got there, he kept telling her, as she tried to read these scriptures to him, he said, come back on Sunday when the people are here with white on. And she kept trying to read the scripture. He just kept saying, come back on Sunday. Because he knew that she would probably like being there, because at St. Paul, she was a missionary,
Mm-hmm.
and I was a missionary. I don't know why I just used to follow my mother.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we all wore white, and he knew we went to see sick people, so he figured that when he saw some people already there that were coming with the white on, that she would like to be a part of it. So she did come,
Mm-hmm.
and then she met them.
Mm-hmm.
And those were the forerunners. They were called prayer warriors. Those were the forerunners of Ma Houston and Reverend Constable York.
Where did the Ma Houston come from? Was Houston her last name?
Yes.
Well, Ma was because she was a mother
The
figure.
brothers
then.
named her Ma.
Okay. All
They
right.
all started calling her Ma because the majority of them, they in jail. And that was kind of new to us then. That was back in 1945. That was a long time ago. So our people in jail, I'm sure most people were scared and didn't know how to go visit them.
Mm-hmm.
Many people had folks in jail, and they had no idea how to go see them. They were frightened to go to a jail to see somebody. And some of those people really loved their people, but they didn't know how to go to jail. But my mama was always brave. She wasn't scared of anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so she found out how to get I don't know who she asked, but she went to that jail, and that started, I say it's like eating Jay's potato chips from then on. She was part of that jail. And also, it was Jack Johnson was the warden. And at that time, they had to live there. He had 4 daughters, and my mother really began to know him.
Mm-hmm.
And so she started really, closing off our street and having different activities where the warden came out and talked to people,
Mm-hmm.
and had people singing, and church people and preachers and all kinds. She closed off 41st Street. People be hanging all out the windows. What is that going on? And she'd have choirs and people, and then the warden would get up and speak. He said, if you listen to this lady, you won't come to my jail.
Mm.
Yeah, I said, I never heard anything like this. People have parties, but she called it a beanie weenie, and she served the children little beanie weenies, little bitty hot dogs and things. And then she started getting the people from, where they teach church down on Chicago
The
Avenue.
seminary.
Yeah.
Oh, and Moody Bible.
Moody Bible. She
Institute.
started having the people coming out there, and she, put a Bible school in her basement, and people coming there all the time.
Well, your house was just a public place
Oh,
then. It was a
definitely.
gathering place.
Definitely.
Okay.
Because, see, by her father being such a strong CME,
Mm-hmm.
and then her mother was Baptist, that's funny.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but they were very much involved in the church.
When my aunt came here to visit us, she was CME, and she went to St. Paul.
Yes.
And at that time, I was principal of Howelton Day
Oh, okay.
School, so it was a pleasure to be able to go to church with her and then show her the building where the school was. But the other members of my family were AME,
Yes.
and we didn't know how she got to be CME with all the AMEs and the Presbyterians around. But she was CME, and so it's a pleasure to know that there was a black man who founded a CME church, because I didn't really know. I understood where the AMEs came from, but I never quite got the history on the CMEs.
Okay, the AMEs were northern.
Mm-hmm.
And also, that was one of the good things I loved about inner city studies, because that's what I was on the CME church. That's what I was writing about.
Mm-hmm.
Because the CMEs, they wanted a church of their own, because AMEs had been started with the assistance of the other people, but the CMEs, I think they were helping them to build a church. And there's one brother who was going to pray after they built the church. When they told him to go upstairs in the balcony, that's when they started that balcony stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He said, can you wait till I finish? They said, no. They said, well, they went to the bishops from the Methodist church, just plain Methodist, and said, we want our own church.
Mm-hmm.
So they said, okay. And so then they went and met and decided who would be the bishops.
Mm-hmm.
And got the blessing of the white Methodist church.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how we have the AME, CME, and just the ME.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But and they wanted their own buildings. And see, I think the AMEs didn't mind sharing the buildings with
When I passed there at last, I went to a funeral at 41st and State, and when I passed there last, it didn't seem to me that the church was still there.
It's not a lot
There
of
was
people
some
there.
other there was a building there, a big building, because
No,
I
it's
was
there.
looking for
It's
it.
just sitting
Okay,
there by itself. Because
All
I
right.
went there about a couple of months ago. My spirit told me, why don't you go and see what's going on over there? And Judge Lampkin is a member there. She was there.
Okay.
And her father.
Okay.
And
Okay. Well, I just didn't understand the configuration, you know, because it had been the church and then the educational building, which housed the school, and those things were from, I guess, 46th Place.
yes.
And so to get to there and see this other kind of structure just kind of threw me off.
Right. Yeah, you can see the educational building real well. But the church is kind of around that corner. Yeah, it's still there. It's not a lot of pep in it. I don't know. I think that I was talking to some people. I said, when you have a church in the olden days, we used to go knock on doors. Well, there's no doors around there, so maybe they're waiting till they build, and maybe they can.
Well, you know, I think that I had a minister on a show that I did just recently, and one of the things is it appears to me that the church, particularly in the north, in cities, has redefined itself, because the church in the south was an omni institution, which meant that all of your needs could be met in the church, so that you know, you came to the church not only for your spiritual upliftment, but you also came to the church as a member of a community, and that community met each other's needs.
Right.
If someone died and the family did not have the burial policy, the church would take care of that. The church would take care of you if you got homeless, or if there was a birth in the family. The church was the people, and the people were the church, and there was no division. There was nothing for you to do on Sunday but go to church. You didn't even cook on Sundays, because the cooking had been done the day before, and you got up early in the morning, went to church, and stayed all day long.
Yeah.
So now you have a situation where people have their lives separate and apart from the church, and they go to the church only for worship purposes. And then there are ministries, of course, coming out of churches. But most churches are not seen in the same way in the north and urban centers as they were regarded in the south. And I think that's part of the reason why you have such apathy among people as regards the church.
Yeah, there's a lot of statistics that say people are just not even introducing their children to anything like churches. They just don't feel the need of it. And I was just reading today about Israel. I'm always trying to keep up with Israel, and they said between the two, the Orthodox and the other Jews, there's a division there. So everywhere in the world, there's a division. You know, there's the people are different. So the Orthodox ones don't like the others because they figure they know how to be Jews and how you're supposed to worship. And if you're not doing like I'm doing, you're not doing it right. Oh, man.
Well, and this is the worst time in our history to be divided. But your mother has many things named for her. She has this playground park. I read that you sent this to me, that has been dedicated to her since 1991, dedicated to her memory. And then there's also a prison program which is dedicated to her out at Dixon, which is
No, it was in Dixmoor.
Dixmoor. I don't know why I got Dixon.
Yeah, that's out there, 147th and.
Okay, and it was an adult transition center.
Yeah. Dr. Burrs and I, we were so lost trying to find that place. We were always lost. She trusts me to drive everywhere. She said, I don't know how to help you, but I'm with you. I said, thank you.
Right.
When you got somebody with you, you keep on moving. We just be going everywhere. We'll find it. We would eventually find where we were going.
Well, now you brought up another icon, Dr. Burroughs. Dr. Burroughs, your bosom
my
buddy,
running buddy, man.
your running buddy. When I thought about you today, and I thought about your mother, and I thought about the work that she read so often in her latter days, what will your legacy be? And I said, one thing that Queen Mother Helen Sinclair does not have to worry about is her legacy.
No.
You have lived your legacy. I mean, you have been faithful to your mission. You have been in those prisons. The day that we were going to do the videotaping in tribute to Dr. Burroughs, I was concerned about the weather, which was just really hazardous. And come to find out, you had been to the prison that morning. I mean, the streets were like glass. The snow and sleet and hail was still coming down. People were calling me, asking me if we were still going to go through with it. I called you to see where you were, and you had gone to the prison.
Wow.
You had gone to Statesville.
Yeah.
So how often do you go to Statesville?
Well, Statesville is our second Sunday in every month. My mother started going on the second Sunday, and the Sunday after she died, which was January the 5th, that Sunday I went out to Statesville because I had an idea that if I did not go, that something would happen. And sure enough, it would have, because that chaplain was really very happy wanted to keep me out of there, but I was there that Sunday, so he couldn't do that from that Sunday on. I drove halfway there and ran out of gas. I said, I am going to this prison. I couldn't get the rest of her team to go. They were kind of scared. And I said, I have to go. And so they said, well, I don't know. We haven't talked to him. I said, well, I just know I have to go. And I went, and I ran out of gas, and a young man stopped, and he had on a shell uniform, which they used to always wear, whole uniforms. So I kind of trusted that he wasn't just somebody. And I told him I had my hood up, and he said, what's the problem? I said, I ran out of gas. So he took me to the filling station, and when I got there, I realized that they wouldn't accept a check, and evidently the credit card they wouldn't accept, so I really couldn't get the gas. He said, well, I'll take you. Where are you going? I said, I'm trying to get to Statesville. He said, I'm going right by there, and I'll take you. Well, see, that's why right now that I tell people I live by the Spirit. The Spirit had that man there at that point. So that I could get to that prison. And when I walked in the gate, I heard the young men that worked in the chapel saying, if Ma Houston was still living, she would be walking in the door. And I walked right in that door at that moment. And so I've been going ever since. So the chaplain was there. He said, well, I'll take you back to your car. And he gave me $20. I said, well, I'm going to pay. He said, no, don't pay me back. And I got the gas and went home. And so I've been going ever since. I said, second Sunday was my mom's. So once one of the chaplains tried to ask me, did I need help, did I need some other people? I said, no. Second Sunday belonged to Ma Houston. Every second Sunday I'm going to be at Statesville. And third Sunday is Pontiac. That's where she was going on the third Sunday, so I didn't see any need to change it. Fourth Sunday was Dwight.
You still go to Dwight?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I'll have to
probably be going on the fourth Sunday.
Very good. I'll have to be telling them I know you. They'll probably treat me well if they know.
Oh, you just remind me. I have a foster son. I got him when he was 13, and he just was released from one of the prisons that's far west. He said when he got in that prison and those people found out that he was Queen Mother's son, he said, man, them people treated me like royalty. He said the warden, the assistant warden, the inmates, everybody said, you Ma Houston's son? So, okay, we're going to take care of you because she has taken care of us. So when other people wouldn't do anything, she was here.
What do you suggest that people do that are not going to go to visit prisons? What can they do to do some part of this work? What do prisons need? What do the inmates need?
You know, some of the things that people used to do a long time ago, I don't know. I know it was a Lutheran we used to hear about. I don't know if they're still doing it. But I remember I used to see them bringing people to the prison who couldn't get there, who didn't have the fare, or, you know, couldn't make it to see their children.
Okay.
And down in Decatur, they have young ladies there. And this warden, she was trying to keep this going. Now she's a deputy director. Keep this going where if someone has a baby and she's in Decatur, that they can keep that baby with them.
Mm-hmm.
That costs money.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, we're trying to keep this going, but it's not something that the state is making happen. It has to be other people. Other people came there and helped to decorate it, like to make it cheery,
Mm-hmm.
and to bring bed things, you know, children things and like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always that people can drive somebody to the prison to see their families.
Right.
Some of them never have visitors because
Mm-hmm.
the folks can't get there.
And some of them never get mail.
Yeah.
And
we really had a real strong mail one while. We don't have it now, but we need it because, see, people used to be writing to Reverend Jackson. He was getting 400 and 500 letters. Well, Jesse Ma, he's a prison outpost. We used to take care of that. But some of our people that used to write, you know, they're not around anymore. And so there are still letters coming because Reverend Barrow received a few last week, and so they gave them to me. I said, okay. Now I need to pass them on to the letter writer because it's better for people to write who do not visit the prison.
Okay.
Because if you're a volunteer visitor, they do not want you writing to people.
Why is that?
Well, sometimes there's some very smart incarcerated people.
Okay.
And sometimes some of us are not quite as smart. We're a little naive.
Mm-hmm.
So no telling sometimes what people would get folks to do.
Okay.
And it's just better if the people who come into the prison do not write.
Okay.
And it won't cause any problem with the officials.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So taking people to visit their relatives who are incarcerated is one of the things. Writing letters. Yes. It would seem to me that some of these schools that have community service as part of the requirement for graduation could add that aspect. That right. People the students could write letters to inmates.
Well, that was one of the things I had suggested to Push Excel one time when they were, you know, really running strong. That they have to get those community service things. I said it would be really good to let them answer these letters. Mm-hmm. Just even to say, well, we got the letter. We don't have any legal people here, but we did get the letter. And if we can find anyone to suggest for you, we will let you know. Just to get a letter back. Right. When they get a letter, you know, that's like in the Army. Somebody call you and say, oh, letter for James Jones.
Sometimes I've sent a money order because they can't do anything with a check. And some places they can only do something with a postal money order, not just an ordinary money order. But the thing is, sometimes they can't write because they don't have write-outs. They don't have the envelope, the stamped envelope that they can use for writing a letter out. These are simple things and inexpensive things. You can't send them stamps and you can't send them envelopes. No. But if they get, you know, some money, then they can buy things at the commissary. They can buy, you know, stamped envelopes. They can buy pens and pencils and paper. They can, you know, they can meet some of their smaller needs. I think it's wise for us to understand how blessed we are.
Oh, definitely.
That all of these things are at our disposal, you know, and we don't have to wait till somebody is benevolent enough to send a few dollars our way. Who finances you driving with this gas $4 a gallon?
Yeah, see, that's one of the things, too, that I'm saying. We're going to have to have some workshops together and try and get that going because I have my volunteers. I always put together the services and what scriptures and all that we're going to read. And I said at the bottom, put how many people that you saw, and then put at the bottom, what did it cost you to get here? So my people be getting down to Pontiac and stuff, $60 and all like that. They just do it. But I think it's not good that they do that because they need to have help with that. They really do. And so this is what I really want to do is kind of reorganize a bit and say, let's do some fundraisers because we need to give them money to go down there. And they are faithful. They are so faithful.
Absolutely. Not only, people don't understand about cars. Cars don't just require gas,
No.
but at some point they require tires. I remember you telling me that you and Dr. Burroughs was somewhere and had a flat and didn't have a spare.
Me and Dr. Burroughs, we just drive along. This is Maryland. Like Maryland, we roll along because we like to look at the leaves and the birds and stuff. And this truck driver honked at us. What are you honking at us? We pulled over here. We got a raggedy tire. It was all gone, but we still driving on it. I said, God takes care of, what they say, babies and fools. We were just gone. We just whatever we were doing, we just did it. We didn't even worry about it.
Well, cars have to be maintained. They have to have oil. They have to have tires. They have to have gas. They have to have an occasional wash. So, you know, it costs money to do good. Doing good is an expensive
Yeah, basically, my children
thing.
just got my car running yesterday because they, I don't know, they first got a battery, and then after that they said they had the, whatever it does that makes the battery work, they went and got
the
that.
alternator.
Yeah, and that didn't work, and they were just out there. It was cold last night and they finally got it together. I said,
And you'll be off again, going to the prisons. What do? Do you have a worship service?
Yeah,
in
we
the
have
chapel?
worship services every at these on Sundays.
Okay.
And then on Tuesdays is creative writing and art. That's the classes that Dr. Burroughs was doing.
Who is taking over that?
Well, sometimes we don't even have it. But my little Marie, you know, my friend Marie, Minister Marie Bashimi, she does it. But see, she's a substitute teacher, and if she goes there, that means she doesn't get to work that day. But she's trying her best. And then on the Tuesdays that I can make it, I go out there, and they have a list of them, a list of young men and women, and some of them had just started when she died. They had just started, and they said, well, we didn't even get to see her. And one lady came from the John Howard, but she says she's not in town all the time, and she came once. And she brought supplies, and she was going to teach them how to use charcoal and how to do faces. That was a real fantastic lesson, because I've been doing a lot of art, and since Dr. Burroughs been gone, since she told me, you're an artist, Mom. She called me Mama. You're an artist, Mama. I said, okay. So I was in Florida 2 or 3 weeks, and I was drawing every day. 2 or 3 times a day. I said, Dr. Burroughs said I'm an artist, and I know she knows what she's talking about. I am an artist. Yeah, so anyway, I'm hoping. So some of my team have gotten some more people who are interested. So we're going to train some more.
For someone to go there, they have to provide their information, their birth date, their social security number. They have to go through a background check.
Yes, because they're not going to let them in unless they find out whether they've been there or not, you know. And if they have, they let them know how long ago it was and stuff like that. But they do check them out, and after they check them out, they like for them to come. And if they come a time or two, then they like to fill out the whole application. And if you fill out an application, they would like for you you can either come as a limited volunteer, which means you might come once every 2 or 3 months. But if you become regular, you become on a regular basis. And most of my people like regular.
Okay.
See, people like Dr. Burroughs say, they give us as much as we give them. She said they give us she said they keep me living. They give us as much as we give them, and they do. Because you're not going there just taking. You're getting so much from them.
I have done some prison ministry, and every time I go, I cry.
You do?
And every time I leave, I cry. Because it's sad to see them confined.
Right.
So once you get there, they welcome you so heartily. They're so glad to see you. And then when you get ready to leave, you realize you have to leave them there. And so it was just such a difficult thing.
But you left something with them, though.
I never could get over. When I first opened up my mouth to speak, I would always have to cry. And then I would console myself or compose myself, and then I would be able to talk. And then after a time, it would be time for us to leave, and then I would get in the same, you know, in the same state again. But at some point, I realized that, you need to be a ray of hope. You don't need to go in and have people feeling sorry for themselves. You need to go in and bring a breath of fresh air from outside, because you're in some way their link with the outside world.
My mama used to always say, go in looking with some cheery looking clothes on, because they see enough drabness. So we always wear something that looks bright and cheerful. But that's really a gift. Dr. Peggy wrote about the gifts of women. But it's really a gift to be a prison minister. My mama told me that because it was ministers at Push when she couldn't go. I said, well, Mom, why don't you let them go? She said, everybody can't be a prison minister. That ain't something you can just pick up and be. She said, no, there's something has to be inside of you to be a prison minister. Because, you're going in there. One young man, he's on a hunger strike. What are you going to say to him? He's on a hunger strike, and he's doing this because of what? One of the young men that was on a hunger strike, I wasn't even aware of. I had never heard of it before, but they said there's such a religion as nudists.
That's not a religion. That's a practice.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, but anyway, that he was a nudist, and so nobody wanted to room with him. And so then that's why he would go into the hospital and go on a hunger strike, because he said, don't nobody want to sell with me. And I didn't know until the people told me, say he called himself a nudist, and so that's why nobody wants to be in there with him. So people will they'll go to SEG or anything if they don't want to be with someone, I remember a young man named Joe Collins, and I remember when my mother first died, I had something that I thought would be good, is to have sort of like a contest of the best resident in Pontiac, that I would give them a bond, a $25 bond. So I said, I don't want anybody to vote. I want everybody to write in why you think, whoever you nominate, why should they be the resident of the year. So they wrote about one young man and said that he was in SEG. And I said, why would they write about somebody in SEG? That means, he must not be obeying the rules. But then when he came in, because I had to interview them, when they brought him in, he was in SEG because he refused to double cell because he was studying. And he got his master's and everything. So he was busy studying. And he didn't want to be with anybody else who would be looking at him and making noise and stuff. And he came out of there with his degrees. And I remember when I went to the Peace Corps, I left him in charge of the prison ministry.
Really?
And he became the man who fought and kept Providence open.
Is that right?
Yeah, he did. So we have results. We really have results. Everybody doesn't come out there and people say they're going and holding up people and doing this and that. Some people have come out there and have contributed.
And that's a very important point to make, Queen Mother, that people who go to prison are not going there to stay. That the majority of people who are incarcerated will at some point
I say 82%.
Exactly. Back in the community. And we have very little in the way of resources to help those people transition back into regular life. And, I don't think people understand what it means to be confined. If you haven't been confined and things have not, you've seen the changes, you've been a part of the changes, and you've been somewhere in a time warp. You have not seen the outside world for maybe 10 years or more. And you come out, the world has changed so very much, and you have not had to relate to people in the way that you now need to relate to people. You have not had, you now need to be open where perhaps when you were incarcerated you needed to be on guard.
Yeah, one thing about the young ladies, so many of them went in so early. And they really had no idea about anything outside of that prison. And that's why when they had the Mount Houston Community Center, when it was at 720 North Dearborn, one of my activities was to go and get them, and I could take them out. I would take those young ladies to Walgreens, and I heard one of them say, "This is the first time I ever been in Walgreens with anybody. They wasn't watching me every minute." I said, "Well, I'm not going to watch you. I'm just trying to let you get a feel of how it feels to be outside since you went in so early in life." And I would take them. I took them to the John Hancock building, took them all over the building, let them see how the other people live. And I took them to the Anti-Cruelty Society and let them play with the little dogs and cats. And they said, "Well, you know what? We never seen it." And I took them to the Lincoln Park Zoo. We never been any place like this. See, so some young girls, before they know it, they married some man and got them crazy, and they really didn't have a chance to go to the zoo and to the park and to no place. And I said, "This is how you think they're gonna come out and know how to function?" And they never been anywhere, you know, just from a kid just going almost to jail in the teens and stuff.
Right, right. Well, we have to learn a lot of compassion.
Oh yeah.
Without breaking down, but to just learn to, in our hearts, to sympathize without being so sympathetic that you become a victim of exploitation. But certainly the notion is that you understand that these people have a challenge before them while they're in the prison. They have an even greater challenge when they come out, and they need to see the world as friendly, because it doesn't pay us to make enemies. It doesn't pay us to abandon and neglect people who will come out and think they don't have a friend in the world. They need to think there are some people who are friends out here in the community at large.
You know, one thing that we, I don't know, Howard Saffel and all of us, we used to work together because we know that there are a lot of churches that say they have a prison ministry, but basically they just go to the prison on one day every once in a while. That's really not a ministry. You just went there for a visit. But when you really are ministering, it's a lot harder than that, because you've got to give people an idea that they can make it. And I know that at Pontiac, when I went to see this young man, well, I was already going there, but we would sometimes we go and we do services. See, we even go to death row, and we were the only group that could do that. And we would go to death row, and people say, "Well, how can you talk to people who are going to die?" I said, "Well, that's one thing about it is you don't get morbid from being with them, because they bring your spirits up. And so you can't be taking theirs down. You know, you're in there, and they're telling you how they believe in God and how they already ready for where they're going, and you know, kind of wondering about their mother or how she going to take it or something like that." There was one young man named Enoch, and when you think about Enoch, is in the Bible, and so Enoch was in Pontiac, and we would go in there, and when they would get ready to sing, he would be the person that would give them the pitch. He said, and then they would sing whatever they were going to sing. That was his job. Each person had a job. There are some brothers who could really read the scriptures, like they preach a sermon when they read it. So one time, when he knew I was going to Israel, he said, "I want you to take this letter and put it in the Wailing Wall." I said, "Okay." I guess this might have been my first time I was going. But he had that faith that I would take that letter and put it in the Wailing Wall. And I said, "And I'll have to do it. I don't know if I'll get to the Wailing Wall, but somehow whoever takes me to Israel is going to have to take me to the Wailing Wall." So he gave me this note, and I was taking it with me, and I said, "I think I should read it, because it doesn't make any sense for me to take something and I don't know what it says." So then when I read it, he wanted a blessing for another brother who was going to be executed before him. It wasn't even about him. And I said, now that is really godly, that he wants this brother to have his prayer in there and not his. So I took it and I put it in the Wailing Wall. Now this young man, he was going to be next. Enoch was going to be next. And when I knew anything, they were calling me and saying, "Did you hear that Enoch died in his cell?"
Really?
I said, see there? So God fixed it where he didn't have to be executed. His mama didn't have to go through all of that agony of your child being executed. So some brother called the mother and said, Enoch just died. The people in the prison didn't even know it. People that worked there, they didn't even know Enoch was dead. I say, so he was thinking about somebody else and not himself.
Right.
See, that's why when you go in them prison and work with them, I tell you, you get more than you give, because
it sounds like you become more human.
Yeah.
Because they don't have to, if they don't choose to, they don't have to play games. They don't have anything to lose.
Right.
They've been divested of the freedom that most of us enjoy and all other material things. So in there, they can really, if they choose, they can get really close to their divinity.
Yeah, and my little friend, Minister Marie, she told them, because she was with me and she began to go into death row with us. And, you know, they just abolished death row.
Yes, I do know.
And all the brothers were there, and that day, you know, the Sunday before, they was asking, say, y'all praying for us? And we say, it's going to work. And we came back, death row was empty. They was all scattered around everywhere. But they do some good stuff when they're somewhere else, because they can really tell young people about that road, that it's not the right way to go. But anyway, they called my mother the angel of death row. I said, I didn't know how in the world I followed in that lady's footsteps. I didn't know I was going to do that. But she was going to death row at Cook County Jail. Cook County Jail. I was with her. I went with my mama every time. And I was talking to my daughter recently, my oldest daughter. And I said, you know, it's so funny that you were going up to death row when you were 16. She said, I wasn't 16, I was 12. I said, what?
What?
She went up there and was singing, it is no secret what God can do. And all these brothers who were back in their cells with their head all covered up, when they heard that young voice, they hopped up out that bed, came to the window. Yeah, she could really sing that song.
Well, I can tell you, when I read that your mother had a childhood, she was crippled as a child.
Yeah.
You know, that here was somebody who overcame the handicap, a physical handicap, and then, of course, the handicap of the racism that still is pervasive in this society, not just in the South. And then, you know, her spirit was not quenched. You know, her spirit remained alive, so much so that she fired you up and got you committed to this same sort of life. And I don't think you can imagine yourself doing anything but what you do. Right.
You know what, my thinking about it, I think my mother probably ended up, you know, in every family there's somebody who's the leader. I think she probably ended up being the leader of all her sisters and brothers. Because my aunties, she was older than her and stuff, but my mama was the leader.
I think your mother sounds like the anchor woman.
Yeah.
She was, you know, because when you describe all the things that she did, she was so progressive in her thinking. I mean, would you imagine somebody trying to be juicing and being a vegetarian and eating yogurt? And
she was cooking greens without meat. People were coming over there getting those greens. They were so delicious. Wasn't no ham hocks and stuff in them greens.
And I'm just saying, you know, this was not typical of her age group.
Right.
This was not the way people were behaving. So I'm trying to figure out how she learned this. Well, I don't know how Alvinia Fuller learned hers either. But, you know, at some point, somebody had sense enough to know that the lifestyle that we were practicing was detrimental to our health.
Right.
And so we had some people like, do you remember Dr. Roland Sidney?
Yeah.
Dr. Roland Sidney.
You know what, my mama cooked a lot of things that a lot of people that I knew, because I used to go to my girlfriend's house. I didn't have any sisters. I'm always over their house. But my mother used to cook things that I never saw in their house. You know, like she had Brussels sprouts and all those kinds of things. And most of those people, they didn't have that. And basically, when she had a big old turkey, when I went to my little friend's house, they had big chickens. And I know my little friend, she beat me and her sister up because we come back with them big drumsticks. She beat us up. Took them drumsticks and beat us.
You have some fond memories of your mother, and so do a lot of people, because she is revered as you are. You were just honored recently. People pay attention to you, Queen Mother, because they know that
Yeah, Sunday was so beautiful.
Was it?
Father Flager, he said, I'm sitting by Queen Mother. I said, I'm sitting by Father Flager, who I know since a teenager. Because I was working with 14 Catholic parishes on the west side, and we used to go on retreats and things, and I didn't know, our people didn't seem like they knew about going on retreats, but we used to take those youngsters on retreats all the time, and we'd have such a good time on weekends. We would have our scriptures all ready, and our classes all ready, and our songs, and our icebreakers. We would plan it out. Like I might say, well, I'll do the icebreakers this time, and the other one say, well, I'll do the first sermon, and the other one say, well, I'll do, and we would have such wonderful like weekends.
I want to follow you down to Dwight one Sunday.
Good.
I'll call you up on the phone to see when I can go with you. I'm going down there. I'm making my first voyage by myself, and then I'd like to go back again. I don't know whether I can grow up to be like you.
Oh, you already. You're one of my mentors too.
But certainly, I feel that there may be something I can contribute. Maybe not as a continuous person,
no,
as you are, but certainly I certainly can do more than I do. And I'm so glad to have had you as my guest.
Thank you,
Queen Mother. I'm sorry I was so tardy in recognizing. They say the giants among us always seem to have to be recognized in a foreign land. You have to go somewhere so people can know
Prophet
who you
is
are.
out honor in his own country.
Right. So I'm sorry that I took so long, but I'm glad that I did finally become aware of, because I just take you for granted. I see you in the restaurant, we greet each other fondly, but it didn't occur to me, do you know who this is?
Yeah, I was listening to someone out there, and they were saying something about Israel, and they was somebody that got baptized in Israel. Oh, Mama D. I didn't even say anything, but I could have told I baptized 25 people in Israel.
Really?
The first trip I took people over there from St. Paul and different places, and they said their ambition had been to be baptized in the Jordan River. And so when I got there, first time this young guide who took us, he kind of took us real quick and was saying, well, we're not going to have time for the baptism. I said, oh, no. I promised these people that they were going to be baptized in the Jordan River. I cannot take them back to America without that. So he called Robbie Ben-Ami, who's the spiritual leader. He said, tell the Queen Mother, I will make sure that happens. So he got a van and brought all of us back, because I said, I can't take people way over in the Holy Land and tell people that I'm going to do something.
We ran out of time.
Your words, you're gone. And
right.
Thank you.
That went so fast.